I stood in the corner of my patient's birthday party wearing plain navy scrubs while her family raised crystal glasses to a fortune they thought they had already stolen. The room glittered. Gold candles trembled in front of a 3-tier cake no one expected Margaret Hale to actually eat. A string quartet played near the windows. Her son Daniel kept one hand around a glass of champagne and the other around the shoulders of his wife Victoria, like he was already posing for a magazine spread titled How Wealth Survives Old Age. No one looked at me twice. That was the first mistake. To them, I was the hospice nurse, the quiet woman who adjusted pillows, measured medication, and slipped in and out of rooms without leaving a trace. The kind of woman rich families forget the second she turns away. Invisible labor in soft shoes. They did not know I was the reason Margaret had stayed calm these past 4 weeks. They did not know I had heard every whisper outside her door. They did not know I had watched Daniel slide papers in front of his dying mother with the smooth confidence of a man who had never once been told no. Most of all, they did not know that I was not only her nurse, I was blood. And by the end of that night, every person in that room was going to know it. 4 weeks earlier, none of this would have seemed possible. I was halfway through a 12-hour shift when Margaret Hale was admitted to our hospice wing. Everyone in the building knew her name. She had spent 40 years building a real estate empire across Connecticut, New York, and Rhode Island. She donated to hospitals, museums, schools, and churches. Her family appeared in local society pages so often that the volunteers at reception referred to them by first name. Daniel arrived first. Expensive coat, expensive watch, expensive impatience. Victoria swept in behind him with perfume, strong enough to overpower antiseptic. Their daughter Paige followed, tapping on her phone, barely looking up while her grandmother was wheeled down the hallway. I remember standing at the nurse's station with the admission chart in my hands, listening to Daniel say, "We need the best room, complete privacy, and no unnecessary delays. Mother values dignity." He said the word dignity, the way some people say tax deduction. Margaret did not speak much that first night. She was weak, pale, and very clearly in pain, but her eyes moved with unsettling precision. She looked at everything. The monitors, the curtains, the flowers Victoria placed in a vase without trimming the stems. Me, especially me. When I checked her vital, she held my wrist for 1 second too long. "What is your name?" she asked. "Emily Carter." Something flickered across her face. Not confusion, recognition. But then it was gone. Over the next week, I became her primary nurse because she requested it. Daniel made a show of thanking me in front of doctors. Victoria kept calling me sweetheart in the tone women use when they want to remind you they believe they are above you. Paige ignored me unless she wanted extra ice. Margaret was different when they left. Sharper, quieter, more alive. She wanted the curtains open in the morning, chamomile tea at noon, lavender lotion on her hands before sleep. She hated pity, fake optimism, and anyone who overused the phrase, "fight this." She once told a chaplain, "I am not fighting death. I'm simply offended by bad manners." I nearly laughed out loud. At night, when the hallway dimmed and the machines settled into their steady rhythm, she told me stories. Not dramatic ones at first, small ones. The first apartment building she ever bought. The husband she buried too early. The piano lesson she never finished because work swallowed everything. The daughter she lost. That last one came on a rainy Thursday. I was adjusting her blanket when she asked, "Emily, were you adopted?" My finger stopped. I looked at her, then down at the blanket again. Yes. She watched me so closely I could feel it on my skin. "Do you know anything about your mother's side?" "Very little," I said. "My adoptive parents told me my mother died when I was 3. They did not know much about her family." That was true. Or at least, it was the truth I had lived with for 26 years. Margaret turned her face toward the rain-streaked window. Sometimes a family does not lose someone by accident. Sometimes it is cowardice, pride, cruelty. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing. 2 days later, I heard Daniel arguing with an attorney in the hallway. I did not mean to listen. I was leaving Margaret's room with a medication tray when his voice cut through the silence. "She is tired. She is medicated. Get it done." A lower male voice answered, too cautious for Daniel's liking. "I'm not comfortable with her current state. You are comfortable with being replaced, I hope." I froze behind the half-closed door. Then Victoria stepped in, her heels clicking across the floor. "Daniel, lower your voice." "No, I am finished waiting." The trust should have transferred 6 months ago. She keeps dragging this out because she thinks she is teaching me some moral lesson. I stood there with my pulse hammering in my throat. When I returned to Margaret's room, she looked at my face and knew. "They are becoming less patient," she said. I set the tray down carefully. "You heard?" "I know my son," she replied. "He has been rehearsing greed his whole life." That same night, after the building quieted and visiting hours ended, she asked me to close the door. I did. The latch clicked. My heart started pounding for reasons I could not explain. She reached for my hand. Her skin felt thin as paper, but her grip was steady. "They think I do not know what they are doing," she said. I tried to keep my voice even. "You should rest." Her eyes hardened. "Do not insult me with kindness, Emily." The shame hit me instantly, because I had seen it. The pressure. The papers. The way Daniel placed a pen between her fingers and spoke to her like she was a child instead of a woman who had built every brick beneath his polished shoes. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. Instead of answering, she asked me a question that split my life into before and after. "Do you know who you are?" I let out a nervous breath. "I am your nurse." "No," she said. "You are my granddaughter." Everything inside me went silent. I stared at her, waiting for a correction, for some softening, for the morphine haze to take the words back. It did not. "My daughter Claire left this family when she was 23, Margaret said. Daniel and my husband made sure of it. She married a mechanic they thought was beneath us. When she died in a car accident 3 years later, Daniel told me the child had died too. I believed him for 6 months. Then I stopped. I hired people. I looked. And 5 years ago, I found you." I sat down so hard the chair scraped to the floor. The room felt too small. My skin felt too tight. "No," I whispered, even though somewhere deep inside me, something had already broken open. "Why would he lie?" Margaret's face turned colder than I had ever seen it. "Because dead heirs are convenient." I think my whole body shook then, not visibly. Not enough for anyone passing the door to notice. But from the inside, I was all fracture and noise. She reached toward the bedside table. "Hand me my phone." I did. She dialed from memory. 3 rings. A man answered. "Harold," she said. "It is time." A pause. Then, "I will be there Sunday." She ended the call and looked at me with a level, almost frightening calm. "Come to my birthday party," she said, "and watch what happens when selfish people confuse silence with surrender." I opened my mouth, but no words came. Because in that moment, I realized she had not simply discovered the truth. She had been preparing for it, and somehow, without ever knowing her, I had become the last piece of a plan she had been building for years. "Tell me something. What would you do if your whole life cracked open in one sentence, and the woman holding the truth looked less afraid than you did?" Chapter 2. I did not sleep the night Margaret told me I was her granddaughter. I went home to my 1-bedroom apartment, sat on the floor in front of the couch and stared at the same chipped coffee table until sunrise turned the walls gray. I tried to force logic into the story. Maybe Margaret was confused. Maybe grief and medication had pulled old ghosts into the wrong shape. Maybe I wanted it to be true because people who grow up with blanks in their history always want missing pieces to become meaningful. But by 7 in the morning, Harold Jennings was sitting across from me in the hospice family room with a leather briefcase and the patient calm of a man who had spent his career watching secrets ripen. He was in his late 60s with silver hair, tired blue eyes, and the kind of posture that says he still irons his own shirts because he does not trust anyone else to do it right. He opened the briefcase without ceremony. Inside were copies of records, birth certificates, adoption paperwork, a private investigator's report, photographs. One of them showed my mother. I knew her instantly. Not from memory. I was too young when she died. But from resemblance so sharp it hurt. The same chin I saw in the mirror. The same left eyebrow that lifted higher than the right. The same narrow hands. "This is Claire Hale," Harold said gently. "Margaret's daughter. Your mother." I reached for the photograph with fingers that did not feel like mine. Another photo slid beneath it. Claire, standing beside a smiling man in coveralls, grease on his wrist, one hand on the hood of a pickup truck. "Your father," Harold said. "Ben Carter. He died 8 months after Claire. Pneumonia, complicated by an untreated injury. There was no estate, no close family able to take you. You entered foster care." Margaret did not know in time. I pressed my thumb against the edge of the photograph until it hurt. She said Daniel lied. Harold's mouth flattened. He told her the child had died in the same accident. By the time she discovered he had lied, the trail had gone cold. Claire had already cut ties years earlier. Different last names, different counties, dead ends everywhere. Margaret funded the search privately. When we found you, she wanted to tell you at once. Why did she wait? Because Daniel was already watching her finances. Because she wanted proof he would try exactly what he is trying now. And because, he said, leaning forward, your grandmother is not sentimental about war. She is strategic. That was the morning I learned how much strategy one dying woman could contain. Harold laid out the structure piece by piece. 10 years earlier, Margaret had moved most of her holdings into an irrevocable family trust. Daniel knew about the trust, but not the trigger clauses buried inside it. If coercion, fraud, or undue influence were proven in any attempt to alter the estate, the acting beneficiary would be immediately removed and the assets would shift to the nearest direct heir not involved in the fraud. Me. I actually laughed then. One sharp disbelieving sound. This sounds insane. It is meticulous, Harold corrected. There is a difference. He showed me a signed affidavit Margaret had executed 5 years earlier after my identity was verified by DNA testing. She had named me as contingent beneficiary and instructed Harold to reveal the truth only if Daniel forced a succession crisis before her death. She had prepared for his greed the way some people prepare for hurricanes, with reinforced windows and a stocked basement. I should tell you I felt triumph. I did not then. What I felt was grief with nowhere to sit. Grief for a mother I never knew, grief for the years lost, grief for the fact that the first blood relative to ever look at me like I mattered was dying in front of me. And threaded through it all was anger. Clean, bitter, electric anger at a man who had erased me because my absence made accounting easier. Harold must have seen something change in my face. Margaret does not want revenge for pride, so he said. She wants protection. For you. For what she built. I looked at the paperwork. The numbers alone made my head spin. Apartment, buildings, commercial properties, investment accounts, article, land. Money beyond anything my life had ever touched. This is not my world. No, he said, but theft is. That landed harder than anything else. Back at Margaret's room, I found Daniel standing by her bed with a folder in his hand and his jaw clenched so tightly I could see it jump. She is sleeping, I said. She can wake up, he snapped. Margaret opened her eyes before I could answer. I can also hear. Daniel arranged his face into concern so quickly it would have been impressive if it were not disgusting. Mother, this is just a routine clarification. Harold says there are a few old signatures missing. Margaret stared at him. Then Harold can explain why he's lying for you. Daniel went still. I had never seen a man in a $10,000 suit look so much like a cornered thief. Victoria stepped in beside him, smile fixed in place. Margaret, sweetheart, no one is lying. We are just trying to make things easier for everyone. For everyone? Margaret repeated softly. How generous. The room tightened. Daniel lowered his voice, which somehow made him more threatening. Mother, enough games. I moved closer to the bed. You need to leave. His eyes cut to me. The irritation there had sharpened over the last week. Before I had been furniture. Now I was becoming an obstacle. This does not concern you, he said. He was wrong, but I was not ready to say that yet. It concerns her health, I replied. Out. He stepped toward me. Not enough to touch. Enough to loom. Be careful, he said quietly. Hospice nurses get blamed when fragile patients become agitated. The threat was polished, indirect, and very clear. I felt the first cold layer of steel settle into place inside me. Margaret spoke before I could. Daniel, if you make one more ugly scene in my room, I will ask security to escort you out like the stray dog you have always resembled. Victoria inhaled through her nose. Daniel forced a smile that showed no warmth and less patience. They left. The second the door closed, Margaret said, Did Harold explain everything? Yes. And? I looked at this fierce, dying woman with her thinning hair and watchful eyes, and I understood something simple and brutal. Daniel had spent his whole life assuming her age had softened her. He had mistaken frailty for surrender. He had confused a quieter voice with a smaller mind. Tell me what you need, I said. Margaret nodded once. Patience, evidence, and a decent dress on Sunday. That became our rhythm. By day, I was still Emily the nurse. I checked medication, updated charts, smoothed blankets, took calls, answered questions from doctors. By night, I became something else. I copied visitor logs, Saved camera timestamps. Documented every attempt Daniel made to isolate Margaret, every paper he brought, every moment he tried to rush her signature. Harold handled the legal side. I handled proximity. And proximity, I learned, is its own kind of power. People say terrible things in front of nurses because they think care work makes you harmless. One evening, Victoria stood at the sink in Margaret's private bathroom, touching up her lipstick while Daniel muttered near the doorway, "If she signs this amendment before the party we announce the transition that night, the board will fall in line." Paige laughed from the couch. "Can you please do it before she dies? It would be so depressing if the birthday party turned into a memorial." I wrote that sentence down after my shift ended because some ugliness deserves exact wording. Another afternoon, I caught Daniel trying to hand Margaret a pen while her morphine dose was peaking. I stepped in and said, "This is not an appropriate time for legal documents." He smiled without humor. "Who made you an attorney?" "No one," I said. "Who made you a decent son?" His face changed so fast it almost startled me. That night, he cornered me in the parking garage as I reached my car. The concrete smelled like oil and rain. His shoes clicked toward me in the empty dimness. "You have started to misunderstand your role," he said. I set my bag in the backseat and turned to face him. "My role is patient care. Your role is to take instruction from the family." "No," I said. "My role is to protect the patient." His expression flattened. "You're a nurse with student loans and thrift store shoes. Do not make the mistake of imagining you matter in this. It is strange how some insults lose their power the moment you know the person speaking them has built his life on lies." I looked him right in the eye. "You should go home, Daniel." He stepped closer. "You think one complaint from you can stop me?" I thought of the trust, the affidavits, the recordings Harold was organizing, the blood tie he had buried, the panic already gathering beneath his polished arrogance. I said, "You should enjoy your mother's birthday party." He frowned. Then I got in my car and left him standing there under the fluorescent hum, looking for the first time like a man who could smell smoke but not find the fire. By Sunday morning, every piece was in place. Harold had the evidence packet. A forensic specialist had reviewed the document Daniel planned to present. Security at the estate had been quietly updated. A judge had signed emergency orders that would activate the moment the trust challenge was formally triggered. The plan was brutally elegant. Let Daniel lie in public, then remove everything in public. I went to work that afternoon, changed out of scrubs at 6, and put on the dress Margaret had chosen weeks earlier through Harold. Black, simple, sharp, the kind of dress that does not beg to be noticed but never apologizes for being in the room. When I entered the Heir estate through the service entrance, one of the housekeepers did a double take. I almost did too, because for once I did not look like someone easy to dismiss. As I climbed the back staircase toward the ballroom, my phone vibrated with a message from Harold. "Once he speaks, do not interrupt. Let him build the news himself." I looked at the words, inhaled slowly, and slipped the phone into my bag. Justice, I realized then, is not always loud on the way in. Sometimes it walks through the kitchen, smooths its dress, and waits for the right name to be called. And if you were me, standing one floor below the people who erased you, would you have stayed patient for one more hour? Chapter 3. The Heir estate looked less like a family home that night and more like a museum curated by money and denial. Every lamp glowed. Every silver tray gleamed. White roses spilled from tall glass vases in the entry hall. Waiters floated through the rooms carrying champagne, crab cakes, and tiny desserts. No one truly wanted, but everyone accepted because saying no would have broken the performance. From the landing above the ballroom, I could see nearly the entire crowd. Board members, investors, charity directors, neighbors who lived behind iron gates and called their gossip philanthropy. People who had known Margaret for decades and Daniel for too long. They stood beneath chandeliers and portraits and spoke in hushed, respectful tones about succession, legacy, continuity. Continuity. That was the word rich people use when they mean they hope the same last name keeps control of the same money. Margaret was not downstairs yet. Harold had arranged for her to make only a brief appearance later, seated, comfortable, undeniable. Until then, the celebration belonged to Daniel, and he was enjoying every second of it. He moved through the room like a groom on his second wedding day. Confident, glossy, slightly overeager. Victoria stayed close, all satin and diamonds and calculated tenderness. Paige laughed too loudly near the bar with two friends who looked like they had been assembled from privilege and contouring. I stepped into the ballroom carrying nothing but my small black bag. And even dressed like that, I was still overlooked for a full minute. A waiter almost walked into me. One of Victoria's friends glanced my way, assumed I worked the event, and turned back to her wine. Daniel saw me eventually and blinked. For the first time since he met me, he looked uncertain. Then Victoria followed his gaze. Her smile sharpened. "Well," she said as I approached, her voice warm enough to hide the blade. "Do hospice nurses usually attend private family parties?" I met her eyes. "Margaret asked me to be here." Victoria let out a soft laugh. "How touching. She has always been sentimental with staff." Staff. I held her gaze long enough to make the word rot between us. Daniel stepped in before she could say more. "Emily, there will be medical attendants nearby if Mother needs anything. You can go." It is amazing how bold cowards become when they believe the room belongs to them. "I'm staying," I said. Something in my tone must have reached him because his jaw tensed. "Do not create a scene." I almost smiled. He still thought that was my role in the story. The woman warned against embarrassment while he stood in a ballroom built on impending humiliation. Harold appeared at my side a few minutes later, calm as stone. "Everything is ready." "Is she?" "Yes." I looked across the room at Daniel greeting a bank executive with both hands and all his teeth. He really believes he has won. Harold followed my gaze. "Most thieves do, right before inventory." At 8 o'clock sharp, Daniel tapped his glass. The room hushed. He moved to the center of the ballroom near the grand fireplace, and the crowd instinctively arranged itself around him. Victoria stood slightly behind and to the left, the picture of a loyal wife. Paige positioned herself close enough to share the spotlight and far enough to look casual. I remained near the back with Harold. Daniel raised his glass. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate my mother, Margaret Hale, on her 82nd birthday." Polite applause. He paused just long enough to let affection settle over the room like dust on furniture. "As many of you know, the last few months have been difficult. But even in difficulty, our family has been given clarity. My mother has spent her life building something extraordinary, and I am honored to say she has chosen tonight to mark the beginning of a new chapter." There it was. The lie had entered the room wearing a tuxedo. He continued, voice thick with practiced emotion. "With her blessing and in accordance with her wishes, I will be assuming primary control of Hale Residential Holdings and the family trust, ensuring continuity of vision and stability for every tenant, investor, and employee who depends on us." A few guests nodded. One or two began to clap. Then Harold moved. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to alter the center of gravity in the room. "Before anyone applauds fraud," he said, "perhaps we should clarify which wishes you are referring to." The silence that followed felt alive. Daniel turned slowly. "Harold." No warmth, no surprise left to fake. The crowd shifted, heads tilted, glasses lowered. Harold stepped beside him, opened a slim folder, and spoke with the precision of a man who knew every syllable would cut clean. "For the record, Margaret Hale has not transferred control of the trust to Daniel Hale. In fact, she has formally contested recent attempts to coerce her signature under medication, and we are now in possession of supporting evidence, witness statements, and forensic review." You could feel the room tighten. Victoria laughed first. "Too fast, too brittle." "That is absurd." Harold did not look at her. "Is it?" Daniel recovered with admirable speed for a man whose internal organs had to be dropping by the second. "This is inappropriate," he said coldly. "My mother is ill." "Harold, your judgment is compromised." "No," came a voice from the doorway. "Yours is." Every head turned. Margaret sat in a wheelchair framed by the open double doors, a cream shawl around her shoulders, one hand resting on the armrest, her chin lifted like a queen who had merely allowed everyone else to rehearse before entering. I had seen her weak. I had seen her exhausted. I had seen pain bend her body. I had never seen her more formidable. The crowd parted instinctively as I moved to her side and placed my hand lightly on the chair. Daniel stared at us, and for the first time all evening I saw it plainly. "Fear." "Mother," he said, forcing concern into the word. "You should be resting." Margaret looked at him as if he were something unpleasant on a shoe. "And miss this?" A few people in the room actually gasped. Victoria stepped forward. "Margaret, please, people are confused." "They should be," Margaret said. "You have all been lying to them." Then she lifted her hand slightly and Harold continued. Due to documented coercion and attempted estate fraud, the trust protective provisions have been activated. Effective immediately, Daniel Hale is removed from all beneficiary authority pending investigation. The words hit the room like a drop tray. What? Paige blurted. Daniel's face went white, then red. You cannot do that. Harold turned to Paige. It has already been done. No, Daniel snapped. There is no alternate beneficiary. That was my cue. I stepped away from Margaret's chair and into the center of the room. Dozens of faces swung toward me. Confused, curious, annoyed. Daniel frowned at me like he still had not fully grasped that the floor was opening beneath him. Emiliette, he said through his teeth, this has nothing to do with you. I looked at him and felt something I had been denied for most of my life. Not rage, not triumph, certainty. I think, I said clearly, you forgot one heir. The room went so quiet I could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass. Victoria actually laughed. This is pathetic. Harold removed one final document from the folder. Emily Carter, he announced, born Emily Claire Carter, legal daughter of Claire Hale Carter, deceased daughter of Margaret Hale, is Margaret Hale's direct granddaughter and contingent beneficiary under the trust fraud provisions. Paige's mouth fell open. One of the board members whispered, "My God." Daniel just stared. It was a strange expression. Not shock alone. Recognition too. The horrible kind. The kind that comes when a lie you buried years ago climbs back out of the ground wearing your family's face. You, he said. There was so much in that single word. Calculation, memory, hatred, panic. Yes, I said. Me. Victoria turned on Daniel so fast, her earrings swung. What is he talking about? He ignored her. This is impossible. Margaret's voice cut across the room like a blade. No, Daniel. It is inconvenient. Laughter broke somewhere near the bar, nervous and quickly smothered. But the damage was done. The room was no longer with him. Wealthy crowds are like birds. They scatter the second they smell collapse. Daniel took one step toward Harold. This is fabricated. It is documented, Harold replied. Another man entered then, followed by 2 uniformed officers and a pair of private security guards. Not for handcuffs. Not yet. For control. The lead officer spoke with formal calm. Mr. Hale, we have been asked to remain on site while the court order is executed and all relevant property and records are secured. Victoria's face drained. Court order? Harold handed the officer a copy. The board members were no longer pretending neutrality. I saw one of them edge away from Daniel entirely. Another took out his phone, probably already contacting counsel. Paige backed toward the wall like distance might rewrite biology. Daniel looked at me again and something ugly crawled into his expression. You knew, he said. Yes, you planned this. I held his gaze. No, you planned this. I just stopped you from getting away with it. His control snapped. He lunged half a step toward me, jabbing a finger through the air. You are a nurse from nowhere. You think blood makes you worthy? You think you can walk in here and take my life? The irony of hearing a thief accuse someone else of theft would have been funny under different lighting. I did not raise my voice. I said, you erased a child because it made your inheritance cleaner. I think you lied to your mother for decades. I think you tried to steal from a dying woman in the one place she was too weak to physically push you away. And I think this room finally sees you the way you have always been. His face twisted. Victoria whispered, horrified, Daniel, tell me she is lying. He did not answer. That was answer enough. Margaret motioned me back to her side. I returned, and she took my hand in front of everyone. This, she said, looking directly at the crowd, is my granddaughter. The only member of this family who has cared for me without asking for anything in return. There are moments when humiliation stops being private and becomes architectural. You can watch it settle into walls, into posture, into the space between 2 people who will never again stand as they did 5 minutes earlier. Victoria stepped back from Daniel. Paige started crying. One of the officers asked Daniel to surrender his house keys, office credentials, and electronic access devices, pending the trust seizure. Are you serious? Daniel hissed. Yes, sir, the officer said. I watched him empty his pockets with shaking hands. The key ring clinked into the evidence envelope. The black access card followed, then his phone, when Harold informed him company servers were already being locked down. For a man who had spent years mistaking possession for permanence, the sound of those small objects leaving his hands felt almost sacred. Margaret leaned closer to me. Her voice was faint now, the effort of being present beginning to show. "Worth the dress?" she murmured. I laughed softly despite everything. "Very much." Daniel made one last attempt, not at dignity, but at manipulation. He turned to Margaret, his face crumpling into a version of grief he had probably practiced in mirrors. "Mother, please. I made mistakes. I was trying to protect the company, to protect the family." Margaret looked at him for a long, steady moment. Then she said, "You have never protected anything you could not profit from." That ended it. Security escorted Daniel and Victoria toward the foyer, while the room opened before them like a wound. No one stepped in to help. No one offered a ride. No one even pretended. As he passed me, Daniel stopped. "This will not last," he said quietly. "You are not one of them." I looked around the ballroom, at the silk dresses, the polished shoes, the expensive silence. Then I looked back at him. "I am not one of you either," I said. "That is exactly why I will keep it." He flinched harder at that than he had at the officers. After they were gone, the room stayed stunned for a while. Conversations resumed in fragments, low and frantic. People moved toward Harold, toward exits, toward safe distance. Margaret was taken to the library, where it was quieter. I went with her. The house suddenly felt tired. In the library, the fire had burned low. The shelves smelled like old leather and dust. Margaret let her head rest back and closed her eyes for a moment while I adjusted her shawl. "You should be resting now," I said. She opened one eye. "Do not start sounding like me." I smiled, and then, to my own surprise, I started crying. Not dramatic crying, not collapse, just the kind that comes when your body finally realizes the fight is over and all the locked doors inside you swing open at once. Margaret reached for my hand. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find you," she said. I shook my head. "You found me." "Yes," she whispered. "And he did not keep you erased." We sat like that in the firelight, not as nurse and patient anymore, not even really as heiress and matriarch, but as two women on opposite ends of time who had both learned the same lesson too late. Family is not proven by who claims your name in public. Family is proven by who protects your dignity when there is nothing left to gain. Margaret died 12 days later, in the early morning, with lavender on her hands and the soft music in the room. I was with her. Harold was there too. Daniel was not. In the months that followed, lawyers circled, newspapers sniffed, and distant acquaintances suddenly remembered my number. Daniel fought everything and lost most of it. Victoria filed for separation before the first civil hearing. Paige disappeared to California with a new last name and a wellness brand, which somehow felt exactly right. I did not keep everything for myself. I kept the company. I kept the buildings. I kept the trust exactly as Margaret had designed it, with one change. I created a housing fund for women leaving medical debt, domestic abuse, and foster care without safety nets. I named it after Claire. My mother deserved to exist somewhere larger than a file. As for me, I did not become the woman Daniel expected. I did not turn cruel just because I had finally been handed power. I still wear sensible shoes. I still cannot stand people who treat nurses like furniture. I still keep lavender lotion in my desk drawer. Sometimes, late at night, I walk through the old Hale library and touch the spines of books Margaret loved. Sometimes I imagine the life my mother might have had if greed had not infected every room she grew up in. Sometimes I think about the ballroom, the silence, the key ring falling into that evidence envelope. And I will admit this much. It still soothes me. So tell me honestly, if the people who erased you came back years later asking for mercy, would you offer peace? Or would you let them live with the echo of the door they tried to close on you forever?